How soon could Elon Musk realistically send humans to Mars? Another good question.
I have strong views on that. My read of the history of space exploration is such that we do big, expensive things only when it's geopolitically expedient, such as we feel threatened by an enemy. And so for him to just say, let's go to Mars because it's the next thing to do, what does that venture capitalist meeting look like? So, Elon, what do you want to do? I want to go to Mars. How much will it cost? $1 trillion. Is it safe? No, people will probably die. What's the return on the investment? Nothing. That's a 5-minute meeting, and it doesn't happen. So
that clip of Neil was from the Bill Maher show, in which he raised a few good questions about the Mars colonization plan. He later went on Peirs Morgan's show and had this heated conversation about the same topic.
Wow, they really don't get it. Mars is critical to the long-term survival of consciousness. I realize that it makes no sense as an investment. That's why I'm gathering resources. You just don't get it, says Elon Musk. Your response?
Rather than just respond to what people responded, let me just say I've read extensively about the history of big, expensive projects in our species, going from the pyramids to the Great Wall of China to the Manhattan Project. And you go down that list, and the greatest of them, the biggest of them, the most expensive of them, related to the survival of who participated in it. And so we went to the moon. We felt threatened by the Russians, the godless commies, around the world. And so these are the motivations that enable people to write checks. And at any time people said, let's do it because it's the natural next thing to do, it just never happens. If you go back to the Apollo era, while we were going to the moon, people forgetting that we went there as a militaristic statement, people who forgot that said, oh, we're on the moon by 1969, we'll be on Mars by 1985. They were just extending a timeline that they thought was a natural, inevitable thing. And nothing that's expensive is ever inevitable. So that's the foundations of my comment. And in terms of going to Mars as a survival plan, if you think about what could put life at risk here on Earth, that could include, global, very serious pandemic, or asteroid strikes, or we trash the climate, whatever. To think of Mars as Earth 2.0 could only really happen after you terraform Mars. And the point I made, which was not in your clip, was if you have the power of geoengineering to terraform Mars, then you have the power of geoengineering to fix Earth and turn Earth back into Earth, as opposed to Mars back into Earth. So just realistically, shipping 1 billion people to Mars, or however many, by the way, I have nothing against that. I just don't see it happening based on my read of human behavior.
I just want to quickly interject here. Elon Musk has had a history of overpromising and underdelivering, whether it was the promise of the Hyperloop or the exaggerated timeline of self-driving cars. He does tend to overpromise. And Neil is raising a valid concern here, which Peirs just doesn't seem to understand.
A lot to unpack there. Look, I've got massive respect for you. I also have a lot of respect for Musk. I also like the fact that he dares to dream very big. And I actually had the honor, I would describe it, of spending a couple of hours with him down in France in the summer, where we got into the colonization of Mars and why he felt so passionately about it. And he said a few things. One, he said, we have to do this because at some stage, planet Earth is just not going to be a viable place anymore, was his belief. Secondly, that inevitably at some stage, planet Earth will be incinerated by the sun anyway. We don't know when that will happen, but one day it will happen. I'll get your response to that.
We do know when it will happen, but yeah.
When will it happen on that point?
Oh, yeah, let me check my calendar. No, the sun will
do we have any idea when that may happen?
Yeah, the sun will transition into a red giant phase, assuming it behaves like every other star, just like it. And as it does, its outer shell will expand, and the surface of the sun will get closer and closer to Earth, and it will evaporate. Our oceans will come to a rolling boil and evaporate into the atmosphere. The atmosphere will evaporate into space, and Earth will be a charred ember that will get swallowed
Why
by the sun.
Why are you laughing,
Mars,
Neil? This is not funny. You're painting a picture of utter extinction and apocalypse. Why are you laughing?
Yeah, that's it. No, because it's not that it's funny, it's that it's in 5 billion years.
Right.
So we have a whole lot of other sort of prioritized things we should be thinking about between now and then.
But on the
and
principle,
by then, we might have colonized other star systems.
Right. So
That'd be fine.
here's the thing about Mars, though. He said, look, if we're going to do this, and he believes passionately we need to do this, it's a kind of backup, really, for the survival of the human species. He said you have to replicate exactly the conditions of Earth. And he said, for example, if you forget about one vitamin, everyone would die up there, right? So everything has to be replicated in a way that you can replicate exactly what happens here on Mars. From an astrophysicist's point of view, is that actually technically possible? Is there any reason why we couldn't colonize Mars from just a pure technical point of view of recreating the conditions in which human existence exists here?
Yeah, so just let me unpack that, what you said. So, first of all, at the core of this, other than living in habitat modules, either underground or just, wherever, that have to be heated because Mars is very cold, and Mars has barely any atmosphere, so you have to pump that in as well. Short of that, Elon has great ambitions of terraforming Mars. I love it. But my point is that if you want to ship humans from Earth to Mars, Mars needs to kind of look like Earth. And by the way, it's tantalizingly close in properties relative to other planets. Venus is 900 degrees Fahrenheit. You're not going there. But Mars is tipped on its axis. It has seasons. It has approximately 24-hour day. It has polar ice caps, as we currently do, and so it's been the object of people's fascination for hundreds of years. So I don't have a problem with any of that. I'm just describing the practicality of it. And if you have the technology and the power to terraform Mars and ship people there, you probably have the ability to bat asteroids out of the way that might have been headed towards Earth.
So it's not just Neil who is raising these questions. Sabine Hassenfelder also made a video about this and had explained how it is not feasible to do so.
Okay, so these are, I think, all the major points to consider. Terraforming Mars is almost certainly not economically feasible, not within the next several hundred years. Living in habitats, probably possible if Musk attracts governmental support, though I suspect they'll have a hard time finding sufficiently many volunteers. There are no good economic reasons to do it. For scientific purposes, it'd make more sense to send robots. The major reason to do it is mitigating existential risks for humanity. And to evaluate the latter, we'll have to ask about the opportunity costs. What is it that we won't be able to do if we pour so much resources, money, people, materials into Mars colony? There'll be less left to develop technologies like nuclear fusion, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, or bionics, all of which would make life on Earth better and would also make moving to Mars later dramatically simpler and almost certainly cheaper. Basically, I arrive at the conclusion that moving to Mars is a good idea, but it's too early. I think we should first develop better power sources, better propulsion systems, methods for faster adaptation to new environments, either genetic or biotechnological, and better ways of managing large artificial ecosystems, and then go to Mars.